The Factor Uncensored, shocking situation in Mexico. 3 surfers who simply wanted to have a good time are now dead at the hands of thieves. This prompted us to ask, what precautions are you taking before heading out on those summer vacations that will be here soon? We have more and the tips you need. And joining us on The Factor Uncensored is security expert Greg Dupree. Greg, we see this recent case, sad case, where 3 surfers found dead in Mexico on a vacation surfing trip. And unfortunately, things went really left for them. What do we know about this case, first of all, before we get into travel safety?
Okay. Well, this was a case where 2 Australian citizens and 1 American citizen all went on a surfing trip down in Mexico. And while they were down there, they were camping about 50 miles outside of Ensenada, and they were confronted evidently by 3 Mexican citizens who evidently wanted their truck or the rims on the truck, because what I understand, the truck had really nice rims. And the authorities said that evidently that the 3 foreign citizens resisted, and as a result, they lost their lives. They found their bodies in a well approximately a week later. And as you said, it's just a very tragic incident for something like this to take place.
Now, if you're out in another country on vacation and you just happen to take your vehicle, only 2 places you can do that in Mexico or Canada,
right,
and you're confronted like that, what should you do in a situation like that?
Well, let me put this caveat in there. First of all, I wouldn't recommend anybody taking their vehicle into Mexico, period. Okay. But if you do make that decision, you have to be prepared to give the vehicle up if confronted, particularly if you're being confronted by armed subjects. The vehicle is not worth your life. But you go back to this story, what I've heard from authorities is that even if you gave up your vehicle, it's possible they don't want to leave any witnesses. You could still lose your life after you give up the vehicle. So you have to have some type of plan in place, to a plan of action as to what you're going to do if you're confronted by armed individuals down in a foreign country.
Absolutely. So when you're traveling, and many people will begin the summer travel season soon, right, Greg, I mean, how do you prepare yourself, especially if you're going to a country where there may be alerts already in place by the U.S. State Department saying this is a dangerous place?
If all, you hit it on the head, Isaiah. First thing you should do is check the embassy warning alerts for travel. And this place was under a warning alert. So if there's a warning alert for a place you're planning on traveling, you should take those warning alerts seriously. Don't think, well, they're not going, it's not going to affect me. Yes, it will. It can possibly, and it will affect you. The second thing you want to do is look at the fact that you have to have a different type of mindset when you travel outside the United States. You can't travel as thinking like an American. Because crime is different in different countries. And what you take for granted, or what your level of safety in America is obviously going to be, in most cases, going to be a lot higher than it is when you travel to a foreign country. So you should be on a heightened sense of alert. And particularly if you're traveling with a group of individuals, you should sit down with all these individuals and say, look, we're going to divide this up in shifts where we're going to have at least one person watching us and watching the surroundings at all times. That way, everybody's not relaxed. Everybody's not drunk, and we can be on alert to protect ourselves when we're out of the country.
I had some friends who went to Colombia for a vacation, and what they did was hired private security there. Do you recommend that if you can afford it?
If you can afford it, definitely. I would say definitely hire private security if you're traveling in a foreign country, particularly if you're traveling south of the border. Because as we know, there are a lot of drug cartels south of the border, and sometimes they get in conflict, and you can get caught up in that conflict very easily, being innocent bystanders. Just take for example, the young lady and her friends and cousins went down there for her to have cosmetic surgery, and they were mistaken for other drug dealers, and 2 of them ended up losing their lives. Yeah. So anything can happen at any given time, so you should be prepared. And if you can hire private security, go ahead and do so.
Obviously, taking weapons with you, first of all, you can't even get on the plane with that.
Right.
Taking weapons with you, even taking ammunition with you, that would be the wrong. Currently, there are two Americans in I think it's Turks and Caicos who
Right.
have been held and arrested, charged for having ammunition there.
Right.
What would be your advice if someone says, well, then I'm taking a weapon with me?
Well, do so at your own risk. Because the bottom line is, you mentioned the case in Turks and Caicos, and all that was evidently the gentleman had a bullet in his suitcase that he was unaware he had left the bullet in the suitcase, and they're holding him based on just having that one bullet. So these countries that have strict laws about guns and ammunition, as I said, if you're going to carry a weapon or try to sneak a weapon into these countries, you need to do so at your own risk, but beware of the consequences. Because when you violate the law down there, it's not going to be like it is in America. It's going to be a lot harsher.
And any other advice for people who may be traveling abroad during this summer period and they want to be safe, and especially if they go to a questionable country where there may be alerts there?
Yeah, just always keep a heightened sense of awareness. Situational awareness is important, but most importantly, have a plan. Don't get surprised and all of a sudden something jumps off and you're caught in the middle like, what do I do now? You should be discussing potential scenarios as to what can happen when you're traveling to these countries. Heck, you should be doing it here as well. And then once you discuss these scenarios, come up with a plan of action that includes everybody in your traveling party.
All right. And once again, that question that we talked about at the very beginning, if you have valuables on you and they want those valuables, would you give it up?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, nothing is worth your life. And if it's worth your life, you shouldn't be bringing it into a foreign country in the first place.